Good evening and welcome to the January 2025 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order. We will start with prayer and pledge. If you could stand.
Heavenly Father, thank you for the opportunity to serve this community. Please give us the wisdom, discernment, and guidance to make the best decisions for our residents and for the town. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you too. Next on the agenda is citizen comments. Do we?
None at this time.
Awesome. Next on the agenda is election of a chairman. So Steve Sullivan's took a different role, different board. So we need to replace him as the chairman. So that process is we need a nomination for a chairman. Does anybody?
I make a motion to nominate Jay Michelson as chairman.
Any other nominations?
I'll second that.
And there's that. Okay. Any more discussion? Step up. Okay. Okay. So we have a vote, I guess, to do that.
And I'll take it from here just so that
Okay.
you don't have to abstain or anything. So Jay Michelson has been nominated for chairman. Are there any other nominations? Motions for nominations? Hearing none, the nomination for the office of chairman are closed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Jay Michelson has, the ayes have it, and Jay Michelson is therefore elected as the chairman.
Thank you, team. So again, that leaves us with
Vice chairman,
vice chairman opening at this point.
do we have any motions for nomination for vice chairman?
I'll nominate Scott. Since he was so willing to nominate me for the other one.
So Scott Numbrian has been nominated as vice chairman. And are there any other nominations to be heard? Hearing none, the nominations for the office of vice chairman are closed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and therefore Scott DeMumbrian is elected vice chairman of the committee.
Congrats.
And that closes election of officers.
Okay, that's it for item number 4. So we'll move on to item number 5, which is approval of minutes from the November 24 meeting, since we did not meet in December. Do I have any motions?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Any comments?
second that.
Second. Have a motion and a second for approval. Any more comments for that? Okay. Did the vote? Okay, so or is that just good?
No, you have to
The
vote.
vote, okay, so we'll vote. All in favor of approval?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm going to abstain since I wasn't in the meeting.
That's a good thing. Okay, move on to new business. We'll start with a special exception. Mitch?
Yes, the first item tonight, we have a special exception request for an in-home occupation at 805 Valley Drive. The property is about 0.86 acres in size, zone R1, which is low-density, single-family residential. The applicant would like to operate a dog grooming business located within a space attached to their garage. The applicant would be the sole employee and with the intent to service about 45 dogs for 4 days per week between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. Section 7.060B of the zoning ordinance detail requirements for authorizing special exceptions. These are detailed below. Special exception requirements, section 7.060 of the municipal zoning ordinance lists general requirements for a zoning variance request. Those requirements and staff findings are as follows. Section 7.060, procedure for authorizing special exceptions. B, general requirements. A conditional use permit shall be provided. The board finds that it is so designed, located, and proposed to be operated so the public health, safety, and welfare will be protected. Staff finds the proposed use of a pet grooming business should not negatively affect the health, safety, and welfare of the public due to the size of the lot and proximity to neighboring homes. Will not adversely affect other property in the area which it is located. Staff finds that the proposed use may not adversely affect other properties in the surrounding area. Is within provisions of special exceptions as set forth in this ordinance. Customary incidental home occupations are permitted by right within the municipal zoning ordinance within all residential districts. In the event questions arise regarding the legality of specific home occupations, the Board of Zoning Appeals determines legality. Conforms to all applicable provisions of this ordinance for the district in which it is to be located, as well as provisions cited in section 7.060 and 7.061, and is necessary for the public convenience and location plan. Staff finds that this site may be able to conform to all provisions of the municipal zoning ordinance as listed in criteria review section 7.060C. Criteria for review: ingress and egress to the property. Access to the site would utilize the existing driveway off of Valley Drive. Off-street parking and loading areas were required with particular attention to items 1 above and economic noise, vibrations, glare, or odor effects of the special exception on or by adjoining properties and properties generally in or near the district. Staff finds that the lot provides sufficient space for off-street parking as the applicant's property has an approximately 110-foot length driveway utilized for parking. Refuse and service areas. Refuse collection will proceed in the same manner as currently. Utilities. This location does have access to all of the applicable utilities. Screening is not applicable in this case. Signs, if any, and proposed exterior lighting with reference to glare, traffic, safety, economic effect, and compatibility and harmony with properties in the district. Staff finds that the proposed business should fit the compatibility with properties in the same district in reference to the above effects, and would be required to meet the sign ordinance if the applicant chooses to have a sign at the property. Required yard and other open space. Staff finds that this yard has the necessary yard and open space for the business, as all activity would be conducted inside a facility which is already constructed. General compatibility with adjacent properties and other property in the district. Staff finds that the use may not be compatible with adjacent properties due to other lots in the area not having a business operating out of the household or previously being approved by the BZA. And number 9 is not applicable in this case. Conclusion, staff finds that this lot provides sufficient space for the operation of the applicant's business. If approved, staff has a couple of recommendations that we would recommend. Limiting the number of clients at the dwelling to 1, which would result in no overlapping of clients, so we don't have one client hanging out waiting while no one comes in, so we gotta kind of stagger out these appointments. 2, the number of employees shall be restricted to the number of people living in the dwelling on the site. Hours of operation may only occur between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. The maximum number of operating days during the week shall not exceed 4. Site shall be cleaned accordingly following the departure of each client. There shall be no boarding of animals, and all state regulations shall be met as well. So those are the recommendations that staff will make if you choose to approve it. Just some ideas we came up with. If you have anything else to add, feel free to, but that is all I have.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Mitch?
Yes.
Yeah, I've got 2. On the request, it calls for an in-home occupation, yet then I see farther down a space adjacent to the garage.
In-home would be a more or less a catch-all. It's still operating out of the house, the dwelling. It's still on site.
Residential.
Yeah.
Okay, so the space that this is going to be done is existing already? It doesn't have to be
Yeah,
constructed?
I got a picture of that here for show you. So this was on the site to give you a better idea. It would be this portion, from my understanding, which would be utilized for that business. The applicant is here and can speak on this if I'm misspeaking on this, but that would be the space adjacent to the dwelling.
Jerome, did you have something from?
Yes, I
Yes.
do. Has there been any comments from adjacent residents?
We have not had any contact from any of the neighbors out there. There was a sign put out there for
Okay.
the entire week, but we had nothing.
And then the second thing is, I know you addressed the sign. Is there any intention of putting a sign out in this residential neighborhood? And if so, I'm not that quite familiar with home business sign regulations about how big. I know the commercial is a little bit different.
Sure. So the applicant can speak better on whether there's an intent to have a sign or not.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of that at this time. Our sign ordinance for non-residential use in a residential district would allow kind of a 4-foot tall, 48 square foot type sign. You could also put one of those corrugated plastic type signs you see all over for yard sales that are typical. So a couple options for the applicant. The wall sign is also an option, much more restricted than what we'd have in a commercial district. But I'm not sure if that's the intent of the applicant at this time.
Anything else? So at this time, I'll close the Board of Zoning Appeals and open a public hearing for anyone who would like to speak for or against this request. If you would, please step up to the podium, state your name and address, and seeing none, I will close the public hearing and reopen the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting.
Does anybody have any questions for Brittany?
Come on, here. Nobody stepped up?
Oh, I thought he said she was. Is she here or no?
No, she didn't want to come up, so.
Oh, okay. That's fine.
Any more discussion or motions? I mean, this is.
Without the applicant here,
Oh, she's here.
how do we, on your recommendation of no overlap so they can pull into the, I believe, park in the driveway, not on the street, how does that get enforced?
We would, it's one of those things, if we got complaints, we could obviously fall back on this and say, hey, we told you on the front end it was
This is the
conditional
rules.
approval type deal.
And the applicant is here.
Yeah.
Understanding. For it to field any questions.
Does this stick with the property?
Correct, yeah. So any condition that you choose to approve, if you do approve this, would stick with the property. Future owners, it doesn't stay with the owner of the property, so going forward, this would stay on that property.
It would still be a dog grooming, it could still be a dog grooming business, so if a future owner wanted to do something different, hair cutting business or whatever like that, they would have to come reapply to do something differently.
Correct. That's where the specification comes in.
Okay.
Yes, Chairman, I've got one more question to follow up with that. Say it becomes a nuisance to the neighbors and we start getting a lot of complaints that they're not meeting this, then can you ever withdraw this, this usage? You know, how do you backtrack on that?
You have to enforce.
Probably should have,
We're looking to see if we can undo it.
probably should have
Yeah.
prepped you on that, that just popped in my head.
That's a good question.
I mean, this is
Very good
part
question.
of coming up with this conditional list.
Right,
Tried to come up with the ideas of how to minimize that as much as possible.
right.
Obviously, if there's anything else further that you would like to put in there, if you so choose to, you can. These are just some ideas that were came up on a staff level, and try to minimize the
Yeah,
impact.
Because, I think no boarding was mentioned in there, but I know I have three dogs myself, so I know what dogs they can do. They can disturb the neighbor. And so I was just wondering if, this thing goes south, is
Sure.
there any recourse for the town?
Sure.
And maybe that's Code's question. Yes.
I'm Christy Brown, the director of the Coast Department. We do have compliance officers that if there is an issue, that they will go out and take care of, and they could, will notify the owner that they're having some issues. And if they do not become in compliance with those issues, we can issue and take them to court. Okay? So there is a way to resolve issues. We'll work with them.
But the use is still there.
Yeah, we
right.
we can't deny the use, but
Right.
we can enforce. We
Rules.
can
The
enfor-
conditions.
Yeah, we can
Right.
enforce the conditions through court.
And any existing code.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely. Okay?
Thank you.
Any more discussion, or do I have a, I mean, we've approved similar requests, maybe not with dog grooming, but with human grooming.
Human grooming.
Human grooming, yes, with
That
hairdressers.
could become a nuisance too.
That could be a nuisance also, I guess. So-
I've got no issue with it, I'm just,
Yep, sure.
trying
So-
to think worst case.
Ask any question you can think of now.
Exactly.
Correct.
So I've got what appears to be a Attorney General opinion on similar question. And the specific question there is, once a Board of Zoning Appeals issues a special exception or variance, does the board have the right to later impose additional restrictions or conditions? Answer is no. Once you pass it with the restrictions, then you can't go back and place additional restrictions on there if you determine that you don't like it. But you can enforce the restrictions as passed. So it would be a kind of a code enforcement type situation at that point.
Kristen was talking about.
And
Okay.
the all state regulation shall be met, that's related to what the building itself has to be maintained to a certain level and like
Yeah,
that to, I don't know what the,
research of this, we came across an article from the state. I'm not well versed in the animal grooming state regulations, but if there happen to be, it's kind of a catch-all. We just gotta make sure everything's all met.
right, I just don't know like the cleanliness versus the, upkeep and
And that was part
daily
of-
cleaning and.
That was part of the, one item mentioned about proper cleanup after each client, making sure it's not left in disrepair after, or I'm sure the applicant doesn't want that to begin with, but.
Agreed, that's not good for business, but.
Correct.
Okay, well, any more discussion, or does anybody have a motion?
I'll motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Do we need to list the,
Yeah, what is your
Restrictions.
motion to approve?
Restrictions
With-
as noted.
Conditions.
And conditions to be incorporated as
As
listed.
noted by
Staff,
the, by staff.
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the request with staff comments. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. All in favor of the approval?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Motion is approved. Next, Mitch?
Yep, next item we got here is another special exception request. This is for a accessory apartment at 143 Dale Drive. This is in the Gwyn Farm subdivision. Property is zoned PRD, which is planned residential development, and the lot is 7,118 square feet in size. The applicant plans to build out their basement for an additional dwelling for familial purposes. Included with the build-out would be a full kitchen, dining room, bathroom, laundry room, living room, and bedroom. Finishing the basement would yield square footage in excess of 3,600 square feet of total space under roof. This is the threshold, which would require 1,750 gallons per minute as part of the fire department fire safety requirements. Based on the building permit, the dwelling is currently sitting just under 3,500 square feet. So with this additional build out of the basement would then add an extra 1,000 square feet, putting it over that 3,600 threshold, which would require the additional fire suppression requirements at that 1,750 gallons per minute. Section 7.060B of the zoning ordinance detail requirements for authorizing special exceptions, and they are detailed below. Special exception requirements, section 7.060 of the municipal zoning ordinance lists general requirements for a zoning variance request. Those requirements and staff findings are as follows. A conditional use permit shall be provided the board finds that it is so designed, located, and proposed to be operated so the public health, safety, and welfare will be protected. Staff finds the proposed use of an accessory apartment would not negatively affect the health, safety, and welfare of the public, will not adversely affect other property in the area in which it is located. Staff finds that the proposed use should not adversely affect other property in the surrounding area. is within provisions of special exceptions as set forth in this ordinance. The Gwynn Farms is a PRD zoning and does not address accessory apartments within the zoning. Therefore, it is neither allowed by special exception nor disallowed. Staff would recommend the applicant check with their HOA and covenant restrictions as to whether an accessory apartment would be permitted. Conforms to all applicable provisions of this ordinance for the district in which it is to be located, as well as provisions cited in section 7.060 and 7.061, and is necessary for public convenience and location planned. Staff finds that the site may be able to conform to all provisions of municipal zoning ordinance as listed in criteria review section 7.060C. Criteria for review: ingress and egress to the property and proposed structures thereon with particular reference to automotive and pedestrian safety and convenience with traffic flow and control and access in case of fire catastrophe. Access to the site would utilize the existing driveway off of Dale Drive. Off-street parking and loading areas were required. Staff finds that the lot may provide sufficient space for off-street parking as the driveway has adequate space for 4 vehicles in addition to a 2-car garage. Refuse and service areas. Refuse collection will proceed in the same manner as currently. Utilities. This location has access to all the necessary utilities on site. Number 5, for screening is not applicable. Signs, if any, proposed exterior lighting. Staff finds that a proposed accessory dwelling unit should fit the compatibility with properties in the same district in reference to the above effects. Required yard and other open space. Staff finds that this yard has the necessary yard and open space to meet setback requirements as the accessory apartment would be located within the basement of the existing dwelling. General compatibility with adjacent properties and other property in the district. Staff finds that the use may not be compatible with adjacent properties due to other lots in the subdivision not having received approval for special exceptions for accessory apartments. However, other properties zoned PRD have requested and received approval from the Board of Zoning Appeals for accessory apartments in the past. Number 9 is not applicable in this case. In conclusion, staff finds that this lot provides sufficient space to allow for an accessory apartment. If approved, staff recommends a couple conditions, putting a condition on the request that the applicant will be required to pay all applicable fees associated with the accessory dwelling unit, which would include but not limited to the Rutherford County Development Tax, Town of Smyrna impact fees, code inspection fees, etc. Adding a condition that the building not be used for rental purposes. The applicant is to verify with the HOA and/or other governing restrictions put upon the property that the use of an accessory apartment is allowed, and all applicable code and fire department requirements shall be met, and that would be pertaining to the 1750 for the gallon per minute fire flow that was mentioned earlier. This is the property. It's a newer, steeper subdivision. Therefore, you got a lot of these that are single. I guess this one's 2 stories, but kind of dips down in the backyard, so you have all the space in the basement that was never built out when the home was originally constructed. So people now are building out the basements, and we're getting some more of these coming through. But this is the site. This is that's everything I got.
Thank you, Mitch. When we say parking is always the big issue when doing this. It says the driveway is capable of 4 cars, garage is capable of 2 cars. You know, I can't park in my garage. That includes the space from the sidewalk to the house, you know, because there's rules, right, so that's considered, you know, in my subdivision, there's a lot of on sidewalk parking.
Yeah.
Like over sidewalk parking was just kind of against, ADA rules,
Yeah.
kind of those things. So we're still sufficient from a parking standpoint.
Sure. Yes, that's always the caveat, is the garage is there, but is it usable is another question.
Right.
But this driveway
The
does
driveway
have
looks
adequate
fairly
space.
large.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you can tell with the vehicle that's sitting in the driveway at this time. Pull
Yep.
that up a little bit further, you can fit stacked vehicles in it.
And I know we're talking about non-rental purposes, and we're also talking about non-short-term rentals, like Airbnb. That's a Smyrna thing, right? So just to bring that up, just because we bring that up often.
Yep.
So if that was an option, that's not an option in
And once
Smyrna.
again, this goes back to the last one we're talking about, it sticks with the property, so someone, if they choose to move in the future, this would stick with the property. A future person moves in there and sees it, thinking they can rent, that's something that's, obviously, once again, our ordinance says you can't do that, and B, you've got this restriction put on it as well.
Anybody else have anything for Mitch before I go to?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a couple questions for Mitch. I know the builder offers these as an option, whether to finish out the space or not. So one would hope that they already prepped for the proper utilities. There's no way to know until inspection. It would be a preliminary inspection to see if the water is sized appropriate for this
Yeah.
particular house?
So the fire hydrants in the vicinity get flow tested, and there's calculations the utility department, the fire department can plug in, and it spits out a number for them for the fire flow, and there's a calculation done based on the square footage under roof area, and based on all those figures, we can come up with what the adequate flow is at the property. Due to the steepness of this road, as well as there's I believe that the main that's running down Rock Springs is quite large, and there was, in order to downsize, you had to put some reduced pressure on it, so that even further reduced it down. But as it stood when it was built, it met all fire requirements and the fire flow. So it's just when you hit this 3,600 square feet is when it starts coming into play.
And they'll have to get that approved before they can even start this process anyway.
Before they would get the permit, yes.
Right.
So besides going in the front door, if it's not a rental and it's an apartment, there's a pathway that has to be in place for the lower access door?
The applicant might be able to speak on it faster, and I can look it up if it's on the site plan. It looks like there is a door that leads to the outside on this.
Yeah, on the drawing there is.
Yes.
So, can't tell if there's already a sidewalk or a walkway from the front yard around to the back or not.
No.
So that would have to be added then.
I don't know if
Yeah.
that's
I
a
don't
code
think that
requirement.
Not
I don't
necessarily.
think
Not
that's
gonna be a requirement?
necessary. As long as there's a way for them to be able to, like a window or a door or something for them,
Yeah.
for there to be an exit.
You got something?
Yes,
before we open?
yes. Mitch, in here, you make reference to an accessory dwelling unit.
Yep.
Is this being considered as a accessory unit, or is it being considered as part of their house with a livable downstairs?
Kind of one and the same. It's more of an accessory dwelling unit because it is a standalone living space with that full kitchen,
'Cause it has
the
a
full
kitchen and
living
a-
space.
My old house had a full blown-out downstairs walkout like that, with kitchen, bathroom, living room, bedroom, and it was part of the structure. And I was just asking, it just seemed like it would be part of the structure, but I can tell you the hard part here is gonna be getting the 1,750 out of the fire hydrant.
Yeah, and in order to curb the fire hydrant not supplying that, they can go ahead and
Sprinkle.
have other fire suppression measures. Sprinkling is one of them. I'm not sure if there's any other measures out there, but that is probably the most common one, yes.
Right. That's all. Thank you.
Well, and this is in Gwen Farms, is that correct?
Correct.
They were annexed in, right, whenever they built
The land was annexed, and they started building after it was annexed, yes.
Okay, perfect. So they tapped into town water, so they're not necessarily on like septic or
No,
anything like
no,
that?
it's all,
Okay,
all-time utilities.
perfect.
It's existing size, doesn't it require sprinkled now internally?
The existing size would not, because it's not over the 3,600 square foot, but once you add
Right
that
on the bottom side.
finished area on the basement, yes, it would kick it over.
But only the new area. Okay, well, at this time, I will go ahead and close the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting and open a public hearing for anyone who would like to speak for or against this request. If you do, please step forward to the podium and state your name and address. Seeing that no one would like to speak, I will go ahead and close the public hearing and reopen the Board of Zoning Appeals. Anybody have any more questions or discussion? I mean, this is something we've seen in the past, recently. So I'm open.
I do have one more question for
Okay.
Mitch, sorry. And I know with this being the water flow with the fire hydrants and all of that, you had mentioned that we're about to start getting some more of these because the basements were left unfinished and they're wanting to go ahead and finish them out for obvious reasons. How much pressure is that going to put on that area if we have a lot of like how many of these homes actually have basements, do we know?
I do not know off the top of my head. I know, for example, I've been talking to a neighbor last week, or earlier this week, about one of the neighbors actually wanted to do something very similar. So I foresee maybe a couple more of these coming through for that. What that does to the pressure, I'm not sure on it, but when you do sprinkle it, because you're aiding the suppression, you get to get a lesser required pressure from those hydrants. Aside from upsizing, I'm not sure exactly what the flow is at this point in time, but it's something utilities department can always take a look at. And
Okay.
I don't know if there's a hard and fast rule for that.
Oh, okay. No, that would be great.
No, it really won't put any more pressure. It's the same thing as a pool. When you put the lines in, they're filled up with water. And generally in a residential home, every time they flush a commode, I think the water is kind of moves around so you don't get stagnant water in there. But it's the same thing as a pool. Once it's filled up, there's really nothing until the sprinkler is activated. And most of the sprinklers now are activated individually, so if there is a fire in this part of the house, it doesn't activate all the others, just the individual, and kind of to suppress the fire wherever it's at, so,
Okay,
all right?
thank you.
All right.
Okay, sorry.
No, anything else?
Not for me.
Anybody have a motion?
All right, well, I will make a motion to approve based on staff findings with also attaching the conditions that they have set forth.
Okay, have a motion with staff comments and recommendations as
I'll
listed.
second that.
Have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda, we have if I find it, a setback variance.
This is a setback variance of 5 feet for the rear and side yards for a detached storage shed, and this would be at 324 Andy Johns Drive. Property is zoned R3, medium density residential, and is 13,353 square feet in size. It does have 2 front setbacks to meet due to the curvature of Andy Johns Road, which is a little bit less than 90 degrees, or not more than 90 degrees, if you will, for the applicant's front yard. Minimum setbacks for rear and side yards for any kind of detached structure would be 8 feet. As presented, the applicant wishes to locate the shed 3 feet off of the side and rear lot lines in the corner of the property. If the structure met the 8-foot setback requirement, the proposed shed would be located approximately 2 feet off of the dwelling, which would present a fire and life safety requirement. Rotating the building to meet the 8-foot setback requirement would then place the shed on the concrete patio area. The applicant plans to install a 7-foot white vinyl privacy fence around the rear of the yard following the completion of this shed, if it is approved. Section 7.080D of the zoning ordinance, detail requirements for variances not involving special flood hazard areas, and these are detailed below. Standards for variances not involving special flood hazard areas. The board shall not grant a variance unless it makes findings based upon evidence presented as it follows. The particular physical surroundings, shape, topographic conditions of the specific property involved that would result in a particular hardship upon the owner as distinguished from a mere inconvenience if the strict application of the ordinance were carried out must be stated. Staff finds that the property does have unique circumstances in regards to the shape of the lot. Typical residential lots have 4 sides and to the parcel, whereas this has 3 due to the curvature of Andy Johns Drive along that front parcel line. The conditions upon which the petition for a variance is based would not be applicable generally to other property within the same district. The property acts as a corner lot and has a large front setback to meet for the principal structure. This large front setback creates a constricted area for any structure to be placed within the rear yard. The variance will not authorize activities in a zoned district other than those permitted by the ordinance. Detached accessory structures are allowed within the R3 district, but are to adhere to all setback requirements. Financial returns should not be considered as a basis for granting the request. The applicant has not identified financial returns as a reason for this request. The alleged difficulty or hardship has not been created by any person having an interest in the property. The applicant is the homeowner but was not involved with the creation of the lot. That granting of the variance will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by this ordinance to other lands, structures, or buildings in the same district. Staff finds that the variance requested could provide the applicant with special privileges denied by the ordinance to other lands, structures, or buildings within the R3 district due to the structure encroaching upon the rear and side setbacks. However, other properties in the same zoning district have requested variances from the BZA in previous years in similar situations and have received approval for such. The variance is the minimum that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure. Staff finds that the requested setback variance may be the minimum to make the reasonable use of the structure for the proposed use. The granting of the variance will not be detrimental to public welfare or injurious to other property or improvements in the area. Staff finds that the variance should not be detrimental to public welfare or injurious to other property or improvements in the area, as the structure would be placed behind a fence and located in the rear yard. The proposed variance will not impair an adequate supply of light and air to adjacent property, substantially increase the congestion in public streets, increase the danger of fire, endanger public safety, or substantially diminish or impair property values. Staff finds that the variance may not have any of these above effects, and number 10 is not applicable in this case. In conclusion, staff finds that while this property is not a traditional corner lot due to the curvature of the road, the lot is set up similarly with 2 front setbacks. The applicant has noted that there will be a vinyl privacy fence installed enclosing the rear yard upon completion of the shed. Codes does require a minimum of 5-foot separation as presented. The structure would have approximately 6 feet of separation from the shed to the dwelling. Similar to what we went over last month, or last meeting, I guess, if you will, with the carport being too close to the house, we want to get a little bit of separation for that fire safety requirement. So this is the applicant's front yard, if you will. This is kind of in the back areas where the shed would be located. Flipping around the other side of the house, difficult to see with the lighting in here, but HVAC unit is right here, so it'd be placed right behind the HVAC unit in the rear yard. And overhead view, this is based on the dimensions the applicant provided us and using the approximate parcel lines that we have available to us. This would generally be the approximate location for that shed to be located as desired by the applicant. That is all I got.
You got any calls?
Yes, a couple calls, more so just inquiring what's going on or anything else. Once explained to them what's happening, all seem to be fine with it.
Any more questions for Mitch? Thanks, Mitch. Anybody have questions?
Yeah,
Height of the shed. If the fence is 7 foot, how high is the shed gonna be above that?
Don't know. Applicant probably help you with that.
Yeah, let's see what that is.
You good? You good with that?
okay. One of the things I have a question about is what's the exterior material going to be? And is it, is there HOA requirement in there? Is there probably not a design review, but, is it, if he wanted to go put plywood up on the outside, could he? And sort of an unsightly shed. I'm just doing the what ifs.
Yeah.
And we can ask the applicant, assuming.
Yep,
he's
and
there.
I don't believe there's gonna be an HOA out here since it's a older subdivision,
Yeah.
so probably not. I don't know if covenant restrictions still stand. It's something that might lapse as well, not sure on that one, but, in theory, the applicant could put plywood shed if they so desired.
Well,
Haven't spoken to them about
I'd
that,
like
but.
to know
Sure.
just if the owner could come up here and,
Yep. So I can go ahead and close the Board of Zoning Appeals and open a public hearing for anyone who would like to speak for or against this request. If you would, please step up to the podium and state your name and address. And
John Armstead is my name, Andy Johns Drive. The shed is gonna be a pre-manufactured, it wouldn't be, it's gonna match the house.
Gotcha,
And then I'm installing a vinyl fence that way. I'm trying not to make it an eyesore and keep it out of
that
public
was
view.
my question.
Yeah.
I've ordered a couple of those and they look pretty good the way they put them together.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I've got a signature too from the 2 neighbors that it would affect. I don't know if that matters or not, but,
it's good knowledge. But, yeah.
so.
Thank
They
you.
Sure.
approve of it, so.
Thank you.
Anyway,
Yeah.
that's all I have to say.
Anybody else have anything for Mr. Armstead?
Do you know how tall it's gonna be in the end?
I've got some paperwork. It might be 8 foot.
Okay.
So you'll just see the
Just the
roof.
top
It'll
of
be a finished metal roof, though. It's not a,
Okay.
if that helps, I appreciate it.
No, that helps. Thank you.
And one more question. Is the,
For,
not for him?
okay, yes.
for- yeah.
Anybody else anybody else would like to speak for or against the request? If not, I'll close the public hearing and reopen the Board of Zoning Appeals. Now you can go.
Is there a side easement there or a back easement on those lots?
No.
Okay.
So, yeah, they're not encroaching on any easements or anything out there.
Yeah, I mean, this one's odd. I mean, we get this request often with a corner lot. They're not always a circular shaped corner lot. They're typically squared off corner lot with
bit
two front
unusual,
setbacks that allow more room. This one's odd that, you know, with the curvature of the road, it's odd, different, I'd say odd. It's different that the driveway goes straight out to the side, which restricts the same thing in the side. I mean, I think that where it's sitting now is, I mean, personally, is probably, it hides it from the public, and with the fence, it's gonna hide it even more. So I'm open for other discussion from anybody else, or a motion for that matter.
I have a motion to approve.
Okay, I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second for approval. We need to add, is there anything to add with staff comments?
I think there were any specific.
Yes.
Don't
With
have any
staff
staff
comments.
Yeah,
comments.
not much there. Okay, so I have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, motion carries. Next on the agenda is staff comments.
I've got nothing.
Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Stand adjourned. Thank you.